So in this question here, I've got a right angled triangle denoted by this right angle here, and I've got an angle inside it which is x. Now my hypotenuse is given as 4 centimeters, and my side adjacent to x is a minus 3 centimeters. Now all we're told is that a is greater than 5. What we need to know is what are the range of values of this a that's on this adjacent side to my angle. So how are we going to calculate that? Well, if a is greater than 5, we know that this side here is going to be at least 2 centimeters. So my adjacent side is greater than 2 centimeters, because I know my a is greater than 5, so it's going to be at least 2 centimeters. Now my hypotenuse is 4 centimeters. Now we know on a right angled triangle the hypotenuse is the longest side. These two sides cannot be longer than 4 centimeters. So therefore my adjacent side is also less than 4 centimeters. Because if this was 4 centimeters, then what would happen is I would end up with a straight line, because my hypotenuse here is also 4 centimeters. So as this would go out, this would just come down and just make a straight line. So that's my range of values for the length of this side. So why don't we use SOHCAHTOA and work out my possible range of values. So SOHCAHTOA. So as cosine here is for the adjacent angle, we are going to use the second part of the SOHCAHTOA. So if we just write SOHCAHTOA like this, this is the bit we're interested in because we've got cosine. So adjacent over hypotenuse. So we can now say cosine of x equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So therefore, let's work out the minimum value. So when it's at 2. So the minimum is cosine of x equals, let's call the adjacent 2, and the hypotenuse we know is 4. So that equals 1/2. So now what we do to find x equals the inverse cosine of 1/2. Okay, now the inverse cosine of 1/2, we know that is at 60 degrees. So x would be 60 degrees. So here x equals 60 degrees. Okay, now what about if we're looking at the maximum value? So let's have a look at that. So the maximum value, that's that cosine of x is at 4, and our hypotenuse is still at 4. So that equals 1. So now we need to know the inverse cosine. X equals inverse cosine at 1. Now when cosine is at 1, we know our angle is at 0. So this is at 0 degrees. So that's going to give our range of values. Now we know that it's less than 4 but greater than 2. So it won't actually ever equal 60 or 0. So it's going to be somewhere in between that. So what we can write for our angle x, we know that it's going to be greater than 0 degrees, but it's going to be less than 60 degrees. So therefore that's our range of values for our angle x. And that'd be a good place to stop.